I was following her lead because I had to, because there was no other choice, because it was just, that's how she came into the world. But it also at times felt very isolating because people you thought I was doing it wrong.
Welcome to the Unschooling Lifestyle, the podcast that challenges conventional education and invites families to redefine success on their own terms. If you're ready to break free from outdated systems and embrace a life of curiosity, connection, and true freedom, this is your space. Join us as we explore real stories, practical insights, and inspiring conversations that empower you to trust your instincts, partner with your children, and take the path of least resistance toward the life you've always dreamed of. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unschooling Lifestyle. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Meg. And if you have heard our podcast in the past, I refer to her as my unschooling soulmate because Meg and I met at a very pivotal time in our lives in regards to unschooling. So we went through a lot of the fears and the progress and the wisdom and the beauty of it all together. So today I have Meg here and we're going to talk about unschooling and human design. And I'm going to let you, Meg, introduce yourself as far as like your background, and then we'll get started a little bit more into human design. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And hello to everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Julieta. And I'm grateful to be here with you and to be able to talk about this. And it was bringing up so many feelings when you were saying what is true, and because that's been our experience, and being able to do it together has been fabulous. That wasn't always the case, and when you had asked about doing this, I was reflecting a little bit about my background and getting to see how much unschooling and unlearning we often talk about I was doing in my background before even knowing that was what this was kind of called, including I'm a former high school educator in the public schools, and this was in California, and did that for like 9 years in all capacities, and really loved being with the kids, but also felt often trapped. I felt I could feel the kids feeling trapped, and would do the best we could. We always started every day doing that, doing the best we could to honor and respect where they were, and that they were feeling often very forced to be there. So we wanted to do the very best we could with the time that we had, which often wasn't much. I got to see all the things I felt about that, and then as much as I got a lot out of doing the teaching, and the teaching was back and forth. Actually, it wasn't just me teaching. Then became a marriage and family therapist, and then unlearned a whole lot of things around that as well. And then became a energy worker and healer, mainly because I needed to support my children. So they were the catalysts to do that as well. And in that different periods of time where it was like, well, if I have kids, it will be public school, because public school's like the only way to go, not private, getting to unlearn that. Then when having them, realizing this isn't working, this is not working for us. So let's try and find something like a private school, like for gifted kids that could help. And then unlearning that, and like all the feelings and the beliefs and assumptions that came with what it means to be at public versus private, and then gifted versus, like, all these labels and things, right? And then learning, oh my goodness, like this isn't working either. So like we have to find another option. So, and getting to unlearn and unpack and, keep staying open to what was actually going to work for us versus a predetermined path or way of being that others or the culture or whatever was saying that was needed in order to be a thriving, successful.
It sounds like unlearning came in different layers. You went public, then private. Where does unschooling, when does it start? And how does human design come into your life, from that, on that timeline? How does it happen?
Well, so I didn't realize we were unschooling even before the schooling that we tried for our eldest had already started. I knew when we were in California that the way we were, I was listening and working with my eldest, Mia, in a way that I was following her lead because I had to, because there was no other choice, because it was just, that's how she came into the world. But it also at times felt very isolating because people either thought I was doing it wrong, or they thought I was making things up, or I was not being strict enough, or I don't even know, all the things. And I was looking, and we tried lots of different things, and things were not working in terms of, the way we were supposed to parent, the way we were programs, things like that. So that started. Then we did find when we moved to Michigan, a place the first place that was the public school, and that was like not working. I mean, it did for a second, and then it was really bad. It was really like we were forced to take her out early. It just wasn't a match. And I still wasn't understanding fully what was going on. Like what I just kept feeling like this isn't working. Let's keep looking at the conventional ways that we can make this work, because people were still not ready. I wasn't ready. My husband wasn't ready. Our family members, because that was at the time mattering a lot. Nobody was ready except for my daughter and my son. But they were, thankfully they're super patient as they can be. And then we found a private school that did meet some of the things we needed, which was like giving her more to do more, like letting her go at her own pace. They use something called Reggio Emilia. It's more geared towards the child and what they need and want. So I felt comfortable with that. So the first few years we were okay with that, but there were still things like my youngest, Max, he would say things like, and this just brings in the human design, but he would say things like, don't tell us it's a free choice. And he was in preschool. He was like, I know this isn't a free choice. You're saying it's a free choice, but it's not. You're saying I have to go 1, 2, and 3. So this is pre-K. And he's saying, give it to me straight. Don't lie to me. And and I'm annoyed by it. He would do it, but he needs to say what was good for him.
It sounds so
And
familiar too.
yeah. So when COVID, so I had already been looking at this. I'd already been looking at this isn't working. I'm noticing this. But I was needing to work. There was a bunch of things needing to happen, and then COVID hit. And as COVID was hitting, I heard about human design, and as a therapist, but I was working 40 plus, I don't even know. That during that time was really rough. But human design was coming up from other people in that I had met. And I'm like, that sounds interesting, but like no room. And then I started doing I learning about energy work. And it was exactly at the same time that you started. We didn't even know. I don't know if you remember this. I learned about human design from my Ahai teacher for energy work. And you were learning, I can't remember, was it Aaron?
I was going through my program with Dana Martin about radical unschooling. Right. So I was going through the program, and Meg and we had just met maybe a few months before I started with the program. I was sharing kind of like some of the unschooling revelations and like the deconditioning that I was going through as far as like sleep times, gaming. Meg and I went through a lot of the technology deconditioning together, and we were able to we bounce each other, the fears, the thoughts. Her family wasn't ready. My parents were not really like aware of what was happening. We were kind of ready to let go and to trust our children and be connected through technology with them, right?
Yes.
It wasn't just a free for all, but it was like a connection that validated their desire to learn differently. We didn't feel free to express with other people because, like you said, people thought we were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conditioning and programming, and I
Yes.
understood around and at the school that we had been at, which we left and then went to like an elective kind of type program for a little bit for 1 day a week just to help my husband. And then he got to see, and all of us really, I mean, we were all, when they say deschooling takes at least a year and sometimes longer, depending on what things you've been programmed to believe, that you can't trust yourself, you can't trust your kids can't trust themselves, like with the computer, like all this stuff. That took some time, right? So, and then so yes, it took to like just underlining what you're saying. It did feel alone because there was so much programming conditioning around. It's not wrong or bad. It's just what we live in. It's like being a fish in the sea. If that's all you see all around you all the time, That's what you believe to be true.
That's what you believe to be true. And because everyone is doing it, I think Gabor
Yeah.
Mate, he said,
Mhm.
is so ingrained in us that we don't even think to question that. And really, that's kind of what Meg and I went through. And then to bring it back to the human design point, I remember, Meg, I had heard Ilka and Liv, which were in my group with Dana Martin, talk about human design. Well, they weren't talking about it directly, but they mentioned that Liv was a reflector and that Ilka was a generator. And they kind of kept referencing that. And I'm like, what is that? So as I kind of got through it, I dove into it and then I shared with Meg and she's like, yeah, I heard about it. Christina mentioned it. Meg said, I don't know if you remember this, so maybe you'll be able to use human design to help people with unschooling. And I was like, well, I'm not really sure about that. I said, right now it's just what I'm discovering that makes sense for us. And
Yes.
that's kind of when I started with Erin Claire Jones. I got the blueprint for
Mm-hmm.
all four of us, and we share because you got the blueprint from
Mm-hmm.
Erin too, right? I believe.
Yes, because Christina had worked with her and another person. And I found it very helpful once I started going into it with clients.
Yes.
Just what I wasn't even touching the unschooling thing. This was just for clients. They didn't have, some of them had kids, some of them didn't, the people that were open to it, but they found it to be very useful to help them to be in a more tangible way connected with themselves and other people, right?
Mhm.
But I was like, I was like, Julieta will be great with this, and this could be really, and here we are, you doing it like so many years later, right?
So many
Um,
years later, yes. Tell me, so what are your types?
right. This fits in very well too with how it helped once I started realizing our types, which is Matt, my husband, Max, the youngest, and myself are all generators. Mia is a projector. Then I found
Yes.
out from you, Julieta, which was so helpful because I am an unconscious projector, and the three of them are all unconscious reflectors. Which the
Yes.
moment I heard that, I was like, oh my, there was like the biggest release, because it helped me understand why it takes them longer sometimes to take in. We've gotten faster and faster,
Yes.
but because there's more and more trust between us all and the space for people to like figure out what they need to do. But I'd be ready to go, you know, and they would be like, I need some time. I'm like, what do you need time for? Like I can see it, right? But they would need time. And it was so painful. It was so painful for me. Now with Mia, in part of what was so important around her being a projector is she also is able, and this is the technical part, but she can self generate. She's got her own stuff going on. Most projectors need to plug into a generator to get what they need. But she would, when there was school or things that she wasn't fully lit up by or not getting a chance to recharge and do her own thing, she would be exhausted. She would be on the floor. I mean, like I've never, and people couldn't understand. People weren't listening. I mean, it was like, I'm like, you don't know what's like. It was even different than what a lot of kids will do is they hold it together, hold it together while at school. And then she like literally for days and the weekends, like it was all she could do to try and recharge. And I realized we were not going to be able to do any of the things they maybe wanted to do or we want to do as a family because they were just simply too exhausted. And Maxie, because he is all right, he's quad right, which I don't know how much you've talked about with your people, but it's mainly the idea of like you need to be able to do things at your own pace. You don't like to be in a structured setting. Like you, even though he's a generator, he needs some structure for himself, but he really like does not like to be, AKA, don't tell me this is a free choice thing when it's not. So he needs to have his own flow, like all the way around. So that was super helpful for me to say with more and more, like, we really need what works for you all or the family, but particularly for you all, rather than in an institution saying this is what you must do in order to get through these hoops to be the right successful person. I'm not saying that can't be for other people, just knowing who they are and what they need and them getting to know more about that through human design as a tangible like blueprints helped me like in the moment when I was feeling afraid or whatever, be able to hold the space for them and just remind us all of what we're here for, or what's possible for us.
Once you learn your human design and their human design too, like, did it
Yeah.
feel like some of those pieces that were from before human design, like through the school, like you're saying, like they were completely exhausted, like it made sense after you found out that Mia is a projector and then Max is a quad, right? In human design, the variables, what Meg is talking about is like the variables, there's some little arrows. When you pull any chart, you will see arrows and they're going left or right. In human design, is generally advised to go into the arrows for an adult kind of a little bit later in the road because you're
Mm-hmm.
experimenting, you're going back to your own self. So most of us, when we get into human design, we're functioning out of alignment. So as we experiment to go more into alignment, then we kind of look at the arrows and see how those kind of work for us. But I have said that for children, that is a really key piece that I like to look at or at least kind of mention it because it really makes a difference. Also, my younger son is also a quad, right? And there is wisdom on every word that they say. If you have listened to any kind of human design talk, there's a lot of mentioning of the 2027 mutation, but without getting into too many details, it's basically we going from the structure left world that we currently live in, like the school, the classes, to compartmentalize all of the subjects more into this flow of creativity. And a quite right person already lives like that.
Well, and also being able to know, for instance, that Mia, again, so she's got, it's called the emotional authority to
Yes.
her, and she needs to be able to fully feel her feelings all the way through. And she doesn't have to be 100% sure, but she has to be 80% sure about like that this will work. But she needs a full like 24 hours to feel her feelings before she can commit to things. Sometimes she knows, but even then, she really like, so it's been really helpful for me to validate that for her and say, this is just sort of how you're made, your system is made, right? Whereas the other three of us are like sacral. So it's like pretty clear. And Maxie is like, so Maxie's got more defined places. So he's really clear and loud and knows, like what he is and who he is. And so being able to know that was also very helpful to help steward again and like give words, give them support in those areas and know again, this isn't some entitled, like uppity, like whatever people want to put on kids, like those kids need to be reined in. Like, it's like, well, this is who they are, and they're here to speak what is true, and they're learning also how they want to deliver it with the most impact, right? And that what they say matters. And when they have the space to do that, it's much and they're trusting more and more like it works for me, this doesn't. Even Mia will get caught up in the, like there was some friends that were like, who's going to this school? And so she was like, well, I might be for high school. And I said, oh, is that something you might really want to do? And she was like, well, I might. I said, okay. And then, I mean, and of course I had some feeling because I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. Right. And she was like, yeah, but then I would have to be up at this amount of this day every day. I'd have to do these classes in order to meet. I mean, she's already passed most of them because that's what she wants to do. Maxie is not interested in doing some of these other things that Mia is doing, and that's okay. He's doing it his way, right? But they're doing it because they feel like that's interesting to them. They want to learn that way. That's how they want to be expressed. Like that's the way they feel they are stimulated, like whatever it may be, but not because someone else is telling them that they should. If it ends up that to get to this thing that they would like, they have to do some things that they have to do, then they are like, okay, I can do that, but not because I'm being forced to, like all the way along. And it's like not what I want. Does that make sense?
Hey there, I'm Anthony, and I'm excited to tell you all about the Alternative Education Resource Organization Conference this year in New Hampshire. It's all about self-directed education where kids can learn in ways that make sense to us. At the Aero Conference, families can be awesome advocates and connect with others who believe learning should be fun. There will be games, workshops, and new friends to make. So bring your whole family and join us. Let's support our unique learning adventures together. You can register at www.aeroconference.org. See you there.
Yeah, it's so completely different. And this is why I love how unschooling pairs very well with human design, because it allows us to have the time to experiment and to really be able to feel all the feelings of what's needed, what's available, what came up from the past, and what's going into the future. I was talking to a friend she said it's not about life being easy, but it's rather
Mhm.
about having an ease into our days that
Yes.
we know, like I also have an emotional authority like Mia, and knowing that my emotions need to cycle through me before I make a big decision.
Mhm.
Now I am able to do that.
Mhm.
Whereas in the past, I felt like rushed to make the decisions all the time, the right decisions all the time. And I have made more wrong decisions than I would care to
When you were
admit.
rushed.
Yes, when I'm rushed, but also give that space to my children. Both of them are also sacral authority, which saves me, I mean, a lot because they know when it's a yes and they know when it's a no. And but we're able to navigate and connect with a piece of the body. And I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes when we're in the school system, we're not able to do that at all.
Right.
Like it's
Well,
just
it's
rush. We
not
rush through it.
yes, and it's not set up for that.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Because it is set up to meet other people's expectations. It is set up to
Mhm.
meet other people's goals.
And to me as a generator, what I've gotten to practice is, and I've talked to you about this a couple of times. Like there's been a few times when I've emailed or texted Julieta and said, is there a way in which generators are going to get more fluid? Or like I can call on the fluidity because often what happens, and I've gotten to have a lot of practice around this, is generators can come in with especially if they're lit up or they're called in be they're invited to do this like a fire hose because it's like and I for me have felt like I will have like so much energy. So for me, I have to use up all my energy. And Mia had is that because of her setup, she has to use up her energy, but she also has to use it kind of a different way. Like we all have to use up our energy by the end of the day, or we don't feel complete. So I have to be very careful if the kids are saying, "Can you help me with this?" or "I would like this," to not then like get so lit up and be like, yes, and then give them like 50 million different things. Because that's the other thing with generators need like one or two. If I could look at myself and go, did I want 50 million things? I usually need a yes or no. Like that's what I need. Like not, do you want this? Yes or no? And then stop and not go, okay, well, we want to just make sure that you feel like you got this, right, whatever, whatever it might be, or I got this, and this. It's like just to like be able to stop and then pivot. Manny Jennies, I get to see Julieta at you and some of my other people in my life that are Manny Jennies. I love that they get to just move so fluidly between the things. That would be really nice to be able to do. I'm still working on, that feeling of like I'm going, and now I'm being told I need to stop and then like pivot over here because they've moved on to this and they're doing, and just breathe. It's okay. That's great. Does that work for me? Does it not work for me? How can I make it work for me? If it's, like et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? So that's been really helpful in terms of parenting, even though he's a generator, Maxie's a generator and Maxie's a different kind of,
They are.
yeah, G
Yes,
than I,
yes. Yeah, but it really does make sense about the energy though, because it's generator types, that's exactly how it needs to go. Like you wake up with a pitcher full of energy. Like it's like if you picture our body or energy into a pitcher, at the beginning of the day, it's full. It's full of energy, and we have to be able to use it throughout the day to where at the end of the day we feel exhausted, but from an aligned type of way, like, oh, this day
yeah,
was so great and I am ready to rest and regenerate at that point. So that's kind of how we regenerate ourselves. And of course, like
yeah,
parents were tired in a different way, but holding space and options that can utilize that energy without being overwhelming, because there's also like the yes or no questions for the sacral authorities is going to be so, so helpful. I know for my kiddos, Anthony, actually, back when he was in Montessori, there was a time where he would say that he got put out of the classroom because he wouldn't answer open-ended questions. That was one of the reasons some of these environments didn't really work for us at that time. But now I know because my oldest son is a 1-3 sacral generator. So what works best for him are yes or no questions, and movement in his sacral, like his guttural sounds, like all of those sounds are so very indicative of what he wants to do when he's lit up by it. So, and often as children, we get moved out of those sounds because we're expected to say yes, please, no, thank you. We're expected to use our words. How many times we hear people say, use your words, use
Right.
your words. But those sounds are basically like it's the connection between all of it for them to say yes, no, for them to be guided. But navigating the energy piece, it's really important. What have you noticed when you don't use all of your energy? What happens at the end of the day? Is there a sort of feeling like how do you feel? I know you walk a lot and
Yeah, I actually had to start running like of the last few months. So this is the other thing is so human design is a helpful anchor point too for me
yes,
to translate what because we also have other abilities that our family has. So human design is like one of those anchor points that people can go, okay, I'd be willing, I can look at that, right? And I can like use those words. So if I so there like energetically like things have been heating up so much literally like and figuratively that I've had to run a lot. So and I have noticed like as my husband is getting more and more into alignment, he is now up. So the three of us who are generators are now up at like 6 a.m. ready to go. So like Mia as a projector is not. Mia needs to sleep in. She's up late. Like she's on her own vibe. Now, there's also developmentally, she's a teenager. There's like other things happening too, like in her physical body developmentally, and then with Maxie too. But if I can feel it in my body like I feel like I'm going to explode if I can't move it out. And it hasn't been I mean, I just know that about myself. And so it's been a really long time. Maybe I couldn't sleep, I guess, or, you know, it's been so long, but I just know this about myself. So, or I'm just moving it out in other ways. If I'm not walking or running or something like that, it might be through like a conversation, right? That lights me up. Like, but every day it's like I'm trusting and I'm listening. And that's the other thing that I feel like human design helps kind of helps an anchoring in unschooling however which way you're doing it, but it anchors in like continuing to practice each person, and then as a parent stewarding the kids and then ourselves, each person really listening and learning to their own internal information that's wanting to come through and guiding us to like what kind of day we're going to have, right? And then we're
yes.
in charge of that. It's a little bit harder for kids because they can't drive around and do whatever as much, right? But as much as we can to help them feel like they are empowered in their choices, that they can't fail. There's always learning. If it's not the way that they really thought it was going to go, okay, well, how do we keep the solution always comes, as you and I talk about, right? Right?
Yes,
We get to
yes.
learn. Anchors that in that inner knowing, the inner understanding, and really listening and being in alignment with your body. The body is a physical vessel that's here to help us. Like it's our BFF.
Yes.
It
And we
really is. I know
don't
it doesn't
see
always feel
it.
that way.
No, it really doesn't because before I came into unschooling and human design, I felt very disconnected from my body. And it has been a gradual process getting back to it. But what you said about human design being an anchor into other things and into other abilities is exactly how we have seen it. We have seen it kind of at our home too, how it has been integrated. It's like I always go back and I go back to the basics. Your my type, I'm a manifesting generator. My strategy is to respond, and my authority is an emotional authority. But those pieces of knowing your type, your strategy, and your authority will carry you, will give you the
Yeah.
grounding that you need to make the rest of the decisions. And like Meg said, there are different abilities. We have seen that like we have been guided sometimes to look at the solar flares, the
Mm-hmm.
energetics of the solar flares. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go back into our podcast, we have an episode with Andrea Quigenti, and we've talked about star children.
Mm-hmm.
Human design has also brought that piece together for us as parents to be able to
Yes.
support our children.
I can feel them softening and relaxing when I speak to and validate their experience. And it's through human design, but I may not use the technical terms. Even today, we were talking about a trip that is not necessarily to the place that my daughter would like to go, which is Japan. We will go there again, but it was like there are other people in the family. And it dropped in because she was feeling a little frustrated about it. As a projector, she needs to feel like she's seen and heard and appreciated, like very deeply. She was just saying, well, maybe it'll be, but there's nothing for me. She just kept saying there's nothing, right? So it dropped in to ask her, would it matter if I do the work, okay, to look and see some of the things I know you love, that you get to have that, like when we go, like if I can find that in each place we go, would that matter to you? Would that help you feel like this could be a good thing for you too? And she literally like watched her whole body just like breathe. And she was like, yes. I'm like, great. Because I don't want to go do the work when I've not been asked to do it. Right. And then get frustrated and all the things, and you're irritated with the fire hose, but I'll do it if you know. And she felt heard and seen and validated, and I got to turn on my generator
I
like,
love this.
oh, and like do my thing, right?
Yes.
But it was like that could have escalated into, I mean, I've just seen it so many times as a marriage and family therapist, like, or as a healer, like just into all kinds of distress and
Mm-hmm.
pain and
Mm-hmm.
people not getting to be heard or seen or felt,
Yes. Yes.
and misunderstood.
Yes, most
So I was
definitely.
really grateful.
And I think at that point, sometimes when that happens, like it gets coded into like different expressions, and then you don't really know what you're trying to resolve at that point. And often, what I'd say too is I tell people it's like you have to go inwards and backwards. Like there's a root to whatever situation is happening. So if you're
Yeah.
able to have space to navigate and to really resolve the true
Yes.
situation, to make sure that everyone's needs are met at that point, then it makes life easier to navigate from that point because we don't have any unresolved issues at that point. They're going to be kind of dragging along behind you as you
That's
move
right.
into this trip, right? Because it could potentially just kind of keep growing and escalating and just more
Oh
and
yeah.
more. And it would resurface every time something comes up.
As
Beautiful.
you said, you have to have the space and time for that.
Yes.
And to keep working, the human design helps with so the unschooling helps so that you do have the space and time, and then the human design helps be that anchor point in which to be able to remember from an like I call it like a zooming out rather than it being a super personal thing. It's like, no, this is just how we're designed, so let me like kind of check back in, where might she be operating from that. Now, did it all come in that way? No, it just like dropped in like, hey, and speaking back to the starseed thing you were saying too, again, Mia made it. I mean, she was the catalyst for me to understand this. When I was younger, these things were happening for me too, but I'd like shut it all down. And again, human design in the most loving, gentle, easeful way helps to remember that, because none of it's scary, but we're told, because we're not giving the support. Again, human design really helps create that support to be able to look at it still from a rooted place, and you get to have all your whatever. Nobody's telling you have to be or not be around it, or agree to it or not agree. But if a child is coming to you and saying these things are happening, and they're happening, and you can see them moving through it, and like, then you are being tasked to show up to understand it more. So it was like it had to happen, right?
It had to happen though, because I mean, our journey is so different. I've always shared unschooling. While it's a lifestyle that we live, then it happens all very different for everyone. And the beauty of it all is like unschooling, and there's human design, and there's like different arrows where it's like circulating because one thing supports the other. I
Yes.
remember, I remember one time Ari, my younger son, he said, "I need to go to 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee," and I'm like, "No." I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like it was like 10:30. My husband was getting ready to do something. My oldest son was doing something else. So I'm like, no, 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 no. And he was so insistent. He was so insistent and that I couldn't really say no. Honestly, like I wish I could have heard him say it was like he knew he had to be there. So I'm like, okay, fine. So here I grab my keys, grab my wallet. Off we go to 7-Eleven, and then he grabs the Slurpee. And then here we come to the register, and the cashier says there were three other people there trying to pay, and we are in line also. And the cashier says to him that Slurpee is bigger than you. And he said something to her, started this conversation, later turned to the three other people and said something to them, but he really put a smile on everyone's face.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew that for some odd reason, he was there to make their day a little bit brighter. I'm not really sure what they were going through, but you could tell they were heavy. They were lighter when they left the 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
So I knew at that point that he was supposed to be there. And then my job at that point was to take him to 7-Eleven. So here
Yes.
we are. We're not only like doing things with them, but just like we're supporting their own journey. As said, as like unschooling and human design, they kind of like go back and forth, and it's an anchor for you to like go into deeper, bigger, and better things.
And to be, and to be open to all the ways that you get to experience
Yes.
thriving and joy,
Yes.
and what it means for you in that way to be successful. And that it doesn't preclude, success on all the levels. Like you don't have to be like, I guess what I'm saying is it takes some balancing to get
Yes.
to a place, right? And to trust in that process. But once you start doing that, it's like I wouldn't want it any other way. And it doesn't mean I have to be super poor or super like not like it gets to be in alignment for everything.
For
And it gets
everything.
in alignment for whatever your family and you as an individual need and want for what's going to work for you all. And it's been very interesting to watch the journey of my parents and Matt's parents as they are beginning to see, because they have a different vantage point when they get to see all the different families and the kids and like all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their opinion of what it is that's possible is changing for them too, and it's becoming more open and flowing. And they're just in a different place than they were when they were afraid of what we were doing. They knew we had to do it, but they were really afraid. And so it's been interesting. They've even gotten to benefit from, even if they don't do all the things or agree with all the things or whatever, they benefit as well from the choices we've made and the way that we are, working together as a family and parenting and stewarding. We call it more like stewarding, but we understand that a lot of people use parenting. But it just gives a different way of being able to anchor in the possibility if people are open, even if they just want to dip their toe, into it to see.
And it's fascinating when you start like dipping your toes, because I think when you said there's a lot of fear around it. As we wrap up, because I feel like we can keep on talking forever, I am so
Yes.
very grateful for you sharing the dynamics that you guys have been through as you navigate like human design and unschooling. But going from most people that are starting out, there's still a lot of fear around it. Do you have any words of wisdom for people that are like on the verge, thinking about it, kind of inquiring about it, but there's still that fear kind of like shows up every now and then for them as they make the leap into a different way of life?
Yeah. So the fear is always going to be there no matter what you're doing. And you can know, or you could see for yourself as you get to practice with that more, to know that when fear gets bigger, it's usually because you're getting closer to listening to your heart and listening to your truth and sort of doing that jumping off as we've talked about. And that you can always go back, as you and I have talked about. You can always go back to. There's always this. There will always be the, whatever these structures are here. So you can't do it wrong. You can't make a mistake, even though we've been conditioned to believe that. And that you can. There's lots of even in, I consider this where we live to be sort of an it's an unschooling desert, we still have a lot of opportunities and people and places like to go and be our authentic selves, right? And that is the most to give yourself grace around that period of time in the fear, and just keep going through. It's the same practice you've maybe done with other things when you were afraid of doing something, and then when you kept going with your heart, you got to see on the other side of it all the things that are actually true, not what the fears said were true. And this is no different. And it feels bigger because it's like your child, you know. If you decide like, I want to check in with human design, I want to check in with Julieta to see what that would be like, to like kind of have this as an anchor point, as a way to like point to as I'm moving through my unschooling journey. If I had this before, and we were saying too that things are speeding up, right? So we were given a little bit of the luxury of going super slow. So things are speeding up, but that doesn't mean you don't have all the things available to you, even in the fear. Sort of put one foot in front of the other and just breathe and know that you're supported. And Julieta is a fabulous support system, and that there's lots of groups and opportunities and things to tap into for the support as you go forward, and that there's more and more and more options other than just one particular way that's always been the way, and that you're never alone, even if it feels like you are.
So many beautiful statements there. We do feel like we're alone, but we really are not. And just like Meg said, I feel like we talked about this, like how we had time to go through those fears because we have been at this journey since before 2020 in a way. And then 2020 obviously marks a very a pivotal moment in there as we move towards other options and unschooling, and we work through some of the fears and all of that. But we have seen now that the transition is much faster. So a lot of people are not having the time to really ponder and then begin to these reflections like at their own pace, but know that there are so many pieces to support you. So, and we are one of them, but there are also, we have so many resources available. The groups are incredibly important, but we have seen and used human design, like Meg said, as an anchor point through our unschooling journey to help us support our children in the best way possible.
Yeah, even the 7-Elevens.
Yes.
I mean, it's like everywhere. It's everywhere all the time. If you stay open to it, what you spoke to, that is on a daily basis. Like, yes. I was like, oh, that's exactly why we were supposed to be here today. That's exactly why you know what I mean? It's just, so yeah, it's just so many options.
It is, there are so many options, but yes, you and your children are here to make a difference. Thank you, Meg. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you. Please remember that your time is precious. I hope you're making it count. See you next time.